Welcome to this performance review training session. Performance reviews are a fantastic tool to help you as a business manager achieve your vision with your staff. So why should we have performance reviews? Well, basically they're an opportunity to acknowledge your employees, what they've done so far, what their achievements have been and how they're going. And most employees really like that feedback, so don't be afraid of having a performance review. They're also an opportunity to match goals. You've got organisational goals, you've got the manager's goals, and then the employee will have their own goals or their own way of doing things. So it's an opportunity to pull that all together and align everyone's goals to achieve what the organisation needs. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not getting what you need out of your staff, then the chances are they're not the right staff for you. But sometimes it's just a matter of prioritising what the goals are and the focus for the employee, especially if you've had a lot of change in your organisation or rapid growth. So it's a way of realigning what they're doing in the organisation with what the organisation needs from them. And that will then help them meet their full potential. And you want that. You want great staff doing everything they can at their best ability to deliver results for your business. You can also identify training gaps. Often a gap in training or knowledge will be holding back an employee, and the manager might not notice that. So when you go through the performance review process, you'll be able to identify areas that they're not performing so well in and talk about training that might be needed to get them up to speed. You can also plan career paths. It might be that they're doing really well in every area, but where you want them to step up to, they require some further training to be able to step up. So you're planning their career path forward over the next 12 months for any learning and development opportunities. And you can also make remuneration decisions, which is so important to make them based on performance rather than just on longevity of service. It makes people become accountable, and it gives you a really open form of management. So we all want to be great reviewers. What does it take to be a great reviewer? We need to use effective communication, which we'll go into in great detail in a minute, and also sandwich our feedback. That sounds a bit obscure, but I'll take you through it in a minute. You need to continue with the process. So there are 3 parts to this performance review process, which is pre-review, things you do before the review, what you do at review, and then post-review, which is absolutely fundamental in getting this whole thing right. A lot of organisations, the managers have to do performance reviews. They hate doing them. They do the review with limited pre-review information, and then post-review it just gets filed in the drawer until next year when they have to do them again. So that just deflates employees and actually creates more bad will than anything else. You're better to not do performance reviews if you're going to do them in that manner, but if you're going to do them properly, definitely a performance review is a great tool. And then obviously as a manager, you're going to be managing performance all year. What this post-review documentation does, an action plan, will make sure that there's goals that are set for managing that performance all year. So you're both knowing where you're headed for the year and what types of things need to be done to bring that person up to speed or to help them excel. So you're managing ongoingly throughout the year. Okay, effective communication, gosh, you could do a training session on that to last a whole day, and I have done in the past. So this is it in a nutshell for you so that you can get on with your job as a performance reviewer. You need to look at using the tool of clarification. Now what that is when you ask the person that you're talking to, which is going to be your employee, what do you think about what I've just said? And that might sound a bit obscure, but often when you're delivering information, people get a really vague look in their eye, and you're pretty certain they're not actually understanding what you say, but the chances are they'll nod at the end and say, yes, yes, yes. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen in a review, because people will take away probably about 60% of what you say. By refocusing them and making them answer what they think you've just said, there's an opportunity to get the message right. So if they repeat back to you what they think has been said, or they'll use their own words, and it might have a different interpretation to what you meant. So there's a great opportunity there to clarify your message. Similarly, you can paraphrase what the employee is telling you. So if they're telling you something about how they think they're doing or why they haven't done so well in an area, you can say, so what you're saying is, and then repeat, but in your own words, your take on it. And that again is an opportunity for them to get the message right to you. We just make too many assumptions that what we're saying is being heard the right way, and clarification and paraphrasing will reduce the error rate and reduce the amount of assumptions made. So they're great tools and definitely are challenging to master, but worth working at. If you speak in clear, short chunks, you're less likely to have the person's eyes glaze over. If it's small and easy to understand, then you will get the message across. But do still paraphrase and check in. But don't. Often managers are very good at talking, and they'll keep on talking because they're looking for that look in the person's eye that says they understand, or the aha moment. And you might keep talking for a very long time and the aha moment passes you by. So do short, clear chunks with some clarification and paraphrasing, and that's definitely the better approach for effective communication in performance reviews. And you want to smile and have positive body language. You want to draw the most out of an employee as possible. I mean, this is a time you've set aside to sit down and have a solid discussion with them. And in their mind, unless they're feeling very negative towards the organisation, in their mind they're saying to themselves, gee, they value me to sit down and have this conversation all about my stuff, because often we feel as employees that we're not appreciated. So this is your time to give the employee some positive feedback as well as in your body language, and that needs to be from the beginning of the session. You want to make it as relaxing as possible, and then you'll get the best result. Even if it's going to be a really tough performance review, make sure you're warm and welcoming. Listen. Don't interrupt with your quick fixes. Us managers, we're fantastic. We know the answer to everything. And unfortunately, we'll often push that upon someone. Now, if we don't close down our thoughts on what the quick fix is and listen, we'll miss the opportunity to find out what's really motivating that staff member or where their blocks are. So if you find yourself wanting to put in a quick fix all the time or say what the solution is, you're better to just hold back and don't say anything. Just listen, even if it means creating some space in the room. You don't have to keep the talking going. In fact, often pulling back from the conversation, if you've asked a question and the employee hasn't answered it, counting to about 15 and waiting for them to answer puts enough pressure on them to think of an answer and contribute back. So don't push your solutions. We want to actually have the employee come up with their solutions. You might have to nurture this and encourage them, but if they come up with their own solutions and you tweak them a little bit with them, there's much more buy-in, which then leads to action. Obviously, you need to be patient because this can be a long, laborious process, especially for us action-based managers. But be patient, ask open questions, things that will require them to not just say yes or no. And that's an opportunity for you to get to know the employee and where they're coming from as well. For a first phase performance review, you're probably looking at an hour and a half of time, which seems ridiculously long. But you've got to learn and master these skills as well. And it's the first performance review. There's a lot of stuff to get through, and they will get quicker with time, especially if you use our HR intranet online product. It streamlines all the paperwork at least. You can send out the performance review link and the employee can fill all that out online, and then you can fill out yours online and then come together with those sets of information quite quickly. Still on effective communication, we want to give constructive feedback, and that needs to be on the behaviour, not the person. If we want to, there's nothing quicker to put someone offside than criticising that person and that person's personality. Whereas if we're looking at the behaviour and what we're not happy with in the behaviour, like then, for instance, they're not showing initiative on something, we want to make sure that we're talking about how they can show initiative, what the behaviour is that we're looking for. So rather than just making blanket statements, you want to sort of give some examples of the behaviour. If it was being done the way you want it, what would that look like? And if things aren't working, if you're having this conversation and you're using all these tools and you're still getting nowhere, try a different approach to get your message across. And that might be jumping up in the middle of it and doing some star jumps, I don't know, crazy stuff. But switch your brain over and try and use some different techniques and maybe get rid of the table, get a cup of coffee and have more of a chat. I mean, we are all human beings. We have a different approach and you know, we like things in different ways. So try anything just to make sure that the performance review process is a positive one, but you do get somewhere. There's no point in wasting your time otherwise. So what's all this about the sandwich? When you're delivering feedback, if it's a negative feedback, people will block their ears. We have this self-defense mechanism where we really don't want to hear negative feedback about ourselves. So people will block their ears. The best thing to do is sandwich that feedback. So deliver a positive first, then put that negative in. So we've opened their ears with the positive, put the negative in, and finish with a positive. And that might go something like, Mary, you've been fantastic on reception. I think it's wonderful how you're getting through those calls so quickly. What I really would like to see also is that when I give you the quotes to do, that they are put through quickly as well, because I don't want to have to keep chasing for the quotes, not being unsure whether they've gone out or not. I don't want to have to look over your shoulder and find that information out. So perhaps we can work out a system, or you can come up with an idea of how you might prioritise those quotes, or let me know at the time that I give them to you. So if we could work around that, because I know you're really organised and you are efficient and you want to do a great job. So there we've started with the positive, we've put the little negative in, and we've finished with the positive. We've suggested some solutions, but we've left it up to Mary to then give us some indication back on what she thinks might work. And Mary might be offended. She might never have even thought that you were having a problem with her quotes. That's where the performance review really comes into its own, is the opportunity to discuss things that in the heat of the moment in business, we just don't get time to stop and talk about. Okay, let's look at how you actually do a review. There are 3 stages, and as I said, it makes a good reviewer when you follow all 3. Pre-review, we want to plan and prepare, and that means, I'll look at that in more detail, but that essentially means getting everybody ready for the review. During the review, we want to give feedback and we want to come up with some solutions, but we want to have the employee contributing to the solutions. Post-review is absolutely fundamental. We want to monitor the progress of our staff, and action plans need to be followed. So once you've designed your action plan, you want to keep going with it over the course of the year. So pre-review, what are we looking at? The employee should be given a competency sheet for self-rating, and that will look like yours as a manager. You'll have the same sheet. So pre-review, you're going to go in, you're going to say, look, this is the first time we've had reviews, or we haven't had reviews for a while. This is our new competency sheet. I want you to take it home in your own time. You can do it at work as well if you've got some peace and quiet, and just score yourself on how you think you're doing on those particular competencies, and anything that you've got that you would like to bring to that review to talk about, that would be great. So that's getting the employee ready, giving them some information. Don't just assume they understand what a performance review is, because they'll be fretting otherwise until it actually happens, and you want to tell them the date and the time that the review will occur. Then you want to go away as a manager. You want to look at their position description. Your PDs in your company should always be as up to date as possible. They're a vital tool to make sure you can see when there are gaps, when people are going to become overloaded because there's too much work on their position description for a human being to do. And it makes it easy to create that new position. You pull tasks off a couple of positions and put them onto the one PD. So look at their PD. Is it up to date? What things are they doing well? What do I think they need some improvement on? And then incorporate that into your ratings competency sheet, because we've identified a whole heap of about 28 competencies that we would be looking for, and most organisations want in their staff, those emotional intelligence things. As for the technical and job specific, you need to look at that from your position descriptions. And make sure you update your PDs after the whole review process if they are way out of whack. So stage 2, you've filled out your sheet, they've filled out theirs, you've come together at the review, you want to just outline what's going to happen today, how long the session's going to go for. Then you're going to go through the employees' self-ratings and talk about them one by one. And you can compare your ratings to theirs. It's often best to keep your number ratings aside, which is why we've put them on a separate sheet, because the employee will definitely clam up if they've got a 5 rating on theirs, which means they're excellent at that particular KPI in their own mind, and they see a 2 on your sheet. They're not going to actually talk about it. So keep your sheet hidden, and you can refer to it as you need to see where you rated them. And then when there's a discrepancy between the 2 ratings, it's an opportunity to discuss it, and you definitely want to be using your effective communication tools at that stage. Now, when there is a gap, we're looking at ideas around training, what way can we change that gap, and definitely look, is it a training issue? Is there something more that I could do, or a mentoring issue? So think from a manager, what can I do to help? Not everything will be solved by what you can do. Some of it is just clarification and it gets people back on track, but other times you might be moving into performance management mode where the gap is just so big you don't think it's going to be filled. And you want to ask for their input, as we've talked about. Make sure it's their ideas coming through on how these things might get improved, and you can tweak them along the way as well, but definitely try and get their input. And there'll be some things that they just don't know what they would do to improve. And that's where you really need to tease it out so that you can be sure when you walk away from the review that they understand what the issue was and you've got a clear action plan for addressing that. Then at the end, just summarise the review and where to from here so you know they know what to expect. Are they going to get a copy of the review themselves? We always get them to sign off that they've had the review, so it's good to give them their very own copy as well. But some people will say, oh no, just put it in my employee file. And then you talk about what you're going to do, which is monitoring that action plan. So make sure they know where it's going from here. With your ratings, if you're using the HR Shed or HR Intranet, the template on there for performance reviews actually scores from a 1 to 5, and the low scores, 1 to 2, is unacceptable, and that means you've got real issues in the way they're performing in that area. If you've got a lot of those low scoring ones on a particular employee, then you're definitely moving into performance management, and you need to make sure you still do your review because it's going to be evidence in case there's an unfair dismissal claim. But it's a good starting point to move on. And some employees, once they've had the performance review and you think there's no turning back, that they're just never going to pick up and they're scoring really low, it's an eye-opener for them and they get clear on what's needed and they actually step up. So don't be surprised if that happens. It won't happen all the time, but it does happen. So post-review, there's a manager's checklist on the template. We want you to go through, check off everything so that we know, or you know as a manager, that you've done everything possible to complete the process. It's really important to anchor that process into completion. And then you're going to make sure the action plan gets delivered to the employee and that you have a copy of the action plan and visit it regularly, okay? If it is performance management, you need to set a time for a meeting to see improvement in the areas that you've highlighted. You may want to follow that up with a letter to them outlining those key areas that need improvement. And if they do improve so much that you don't need to have that meeting, still have the meeting. You need to have the meeting that says, okay, that's fantastic, I am so rapt with your improvement, but I need to know that this is consistent and going to continue on. So I'm going to set another meeting date in 3 months, whatever time frame you think, from now. And if there's any change in the negative, then we might bring that meeting date forward. Just so you know that I can't completely write this off as complete improvement. We just need to keep monitoring it, but you're doing a fabulous job and I'm sure you'll get there. So that's the performance management side of it. Okay, I've talked about these action plans. What on earth are they? You want to have clear, measurable goals. So you can say at the end of the year when they've achieved all these items, yes, I can see they've achieved that. Yes, they've achieved that. Rather than wishy-washy things that can be interpreted different ways. So make sure your actions are clear and use the template provided. You want to constantly monitor the action plan, and that will mean that your employees will be very clear and focused because they've got an action plan, you've discussed it all, everyone understands it, you're all on board, and they feel like they're getting somewhere as well. And don't be surprised if your action plan has to change throughout the year. Often there'll be some elements that can get changed really quickly. Someone might complete it really quickly, or you might find that there are tools and things that need to be implemented into the organisation in order for that action to be able to be done. So there might be some change and delay, and adjust your action plan accordingly. And don't let your performance review down by not checking in on actions. You want